All right, guys, we're switching things up a little bit. I know that games are almost here. I know we're in the middle of the preseason. I know everyone's thinking about roster cut downs, who's going to make the team, who might we acquire in the next couple of weeks, who could we trade for. I know there's football happening right now, but I saw this announcement come across my desk a little bit ago, just a few minutes ago, actually. And I want to take some time out to talk about this because got to remember the past, right? We got to remember the happy moments from history. Can't just focus on the here and the now all the time. Now, we can't do anything to change the past, obviously, but that doesn't mean we should forget the past. So, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about this because, I'm 31 years old and I started being a Seahawks fan really when I was 6. So that's a quarter of a century. So I've seen a lot. And I know a lot of the people who watch this channel and watch my videos are a good deal younger than me, and they don't remember and they don't have memories of watching all the things that I remember and have memories of watching. We have a couple people who are older than me too who probably remember even more than I do, but a lot of the people on this channel associate the Seahawks with the Pete Carroll, Russell Wilson era. But that era, while it is the best era the team has ever had, is not the era that made me fall in love with this team. A lot of people who watch these videos, even if they didn't start, even if they started watching the Seahawks a little before those two guys showed up, it was Wilson and Carroll that made them fall in love with the team. But for me, it was the era before that. It was the era of Matt Hasselbeck and Mike Holmgren. So we got word earlier today from Greg Bell and several other sources that Matt Hasselbeck and Mike Holmgren are both going to be added to the Ring of Honor. Hasselbeck will be honored into the ring on the Monday night home game against New Orleans on October 25th, and Holmgren will be honored October 31st against Jacksonville. So I want to talk about these guys for a little bit because these were the guys who made me fall in love with the Seahawks. I may have actually had more passion for the Seahawks during this era than I did during the current era, or if you want to say that era is kind of past because there were so many pieces involved in that era that aren't here anymore, like Earl Thomas, Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor. But it was this era, and maybe it was just because I was younger and able to care a little bit more about sports than I do now. But this was these were my guys. Matt Hasselbeck, he was here for a decade and it wasn't always amazing. He ended up posting 3 Pro Bowl seasons. We went to the playoffs, I think, a grand total of 5 times. And, well, actually 6 times. We ended up winning 5 playoff games total that he started. The Super Bowl run in 2005. We went 2 and done in 2006, 2007. Then, of course, he had the miracle. We all remember that game for the Beastquake against New Orleans in 2010, but don't forget that Matt Hasselbeck had one of the best games of his life in that game, and it was after a season where he did not play well at all. He did not have a good season. The team somehow managed to gut out a playoff spot in one of the worst divisions ever, and it was kind of like the golf game in Caddyshack, where the dude's playing in a lightning storm, and he just has the best round of his life out of nowhere. It was like that, man. It was... I wish that was the last game he ever played here. Obviously, it wasn't because we won that game and we advanced to the next round. But, 5 playoff wins, 3 Pro Bowl appearances. I'll fondly remember some of the games he had at the end of 2002 when it looked like his time in Seattle might have been coming to a close. He had some monster games down the stretch of 2002 to secure that starting job going into 2003, where he posted his first Pro Bowl season. I'll remember 2005. This season, we lost both of our starting receivers for most of the year to injury. Darrell Jackson and Bobby Engram missed a lot of that season. Joe Juravicius was our number one wide receiver, I remember. And there were games where it was a real struggle to get guys open. But Hasselbeck had his best season, 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, made the Pro Bowl. He was the bus driver for the offense because we had Sean Alexander winning MVP. But Hasselbeck had a really impressive year with nobody to throw to whatsoever. And then, of course, 2007, where he set a lot of franchise records, almost threw for 4,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, won a playoff game. All in all, if you take a look at his time in Seattle as a whole, he had a winning record, 69-62, plus the 5 playoff wins. He posted some pretty good numbers, almost 30,000 yards. He was the quarterback that made me really get invested in the Seahawks, and he was the first quarterback that I ever had who was actually good, who we could actually rely on. And then you have the coach that actually brought him to Seattle. That would be Mike Holmgren. He was in Seattle for 10 years as well. When he came over from Green Bay, he actually brought Hasselbeck over in a trade. And I don't think it was immediate, but there was definitely that connection there. And his tenure in Seattle was... it wasn't always great. We did have 3 losing seasons. We had 1 really bad season, which was actually his final year, which was sad. But we had 5 playoff berths, I believe. I believe we had 4 playoff wins total, including the NFC title, and going to the Super Bowl, the best season in franchise history, 13 wins. 2 other seasons of double-digit victories. 3 seasons other than that where we made the playoffs. And after going through the Pete Carroll era, this might not seem that appealing, right? Like, this is a 10-year stretch where you make the playoffs. I believe it was 5 times total. So it doesn't look that great. I'm sorry, it was actually 6 times total. And you win a grand total of 4 games over a 10-year stretch. It doesn't sound that great, but you got to understand where we were coming from going into that. If you take a look at the 90s for the Seahawks, it was not a good time. Before Mike Holmgren got here, the 2 coaches that the Seahawks had were Tom Flores, who never had a good season here. We finished at the bottom of the division all 3 years he was here. And then Dennis Erickson, who was my first Seahawks head coach, because I started watching the team in 1996. So Dennis Erickson was the first Seahawks head coach that I was familiar with, and they were bad times, man. They really were. 8-8, 8-8, 7-9, 8-8. Not bad enough to get a really good draft pick. Not good enough to actually make the playoffs pretty much ever. Rick Meyer, he was the first Seahawks quarterback that I was familiar with. And I got into the team just when he had proven that he didn't have what it took to cut it in the NFL. Bad times. And before I got into the team, when I was too young, before I knew what football even really was, the 90s were bad. I mean, I think we missed out on Drew Bledsoe by a coin flip. We went 2-14 and ended up with Rick Meyer because we didn't get the Bledsoe pick, which ended up being disastrous in the long run. We didn't make the playoffs a single year after I was born because I was born in 89. So last playoff run we had made before Holmgren got here was 88. I think last time we had won a playoff game was 1984, which was 5 years before I was born. So things were really bad before Holmgren got here. And he made things respectable. He turned this Seahawks team into a team that wasn't just a bottom-feeding laughingstock, paper bags on the head type stuff. So I wanted to make this video to talk about them real quick because they had the first truly complete era of Seahawks football that felt respectable and felt like something that we as fans could be happy to hang our hat on. I know that Dave Craig had some good seasons here. I know we made the playoffs a few times with Dave Craig. I know that we love Jim Zorn, but we never made the playoffs with him. Obviously, we all love Steve Largent around here, and there are guys on the 80s Seahawks teams that we as fans have appreciation for. But the first real era of relevance for the Seahawks was the OOs. And it was because of Holmgren's coaching and Hasselbeck's QB play for the most part. Those were the two leaders. Now, not to diminish what Walter Jones and Sean Alexander and Lofa Tutupu and guys like that did. Chad Brown, I'll throw Chad Brown in there as well. Not to diminish anything those guys did. But I think that a lot of people, I get comments on my videos sometimes, and I get comments in my chats on stream, where people will say, whenever we talk about moving on from Russell Wilson or moving on from Pete Carroll, they'll say, every success this franchise has ever had, everything that this franchise is, we owe to Carroll and Wilson. And I always say that's simply not true. Carroll and Wilson did not make this franchise respectable. Holmgren and Hasselbeck did. Now, Carroll and Wilson picked up on that and ran with it to heights that Holmgren never got to. But Holmgren turned us into a real quality NFL franchise. Holmgren made us a team that won the division 4 years in a row and made a Super Bowl run, won 4 playoff games in a 3-year stretch. And we were actually a team that people respected and feared and didn't necessarily want to play. So I want to give a lot of credit to those guys. They didn't win a Super Bowl. Didn't happen for them. It was sad that era couldn't end with a Super Bowl or get a Super Bowl at some point. But it was the era of Seahawks football that made us not be a candidate to be moved to LA every 5 years. Some people might not remember, but I remember watching the news when I was little when the team almost moved to LA. It was very, very close. Well, we don't have to worry about this team ever getting moved to LA now because we actually have some success. We actually win games. We sell out our home games. And the big reason why is because Mike Holmgren and Matt Hasselbeck brought legitimacy to this team. We had a real franchise quarterback. He wasn't the best QB in the league, but he was respectable. And we had a coach who was able to lead the team to a good deal of success. And basically, despite his flaws, in-game management, blah, 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 there were problems with Holmgren. There were problems with both these guys. But he made this team feel like they were a genuine threat. All right, I'm going to go and get out of here. Peace out, go Hawks. Maybe we'll get some news later today. But I just wanted to talk about my first Seahawks quarterback and my first Seahawks coach that I really appreciated. Because I certainly didn't appreciate the Dennis Ericksons and Rick Myers of the world, All right, so they're coming into the Ring of Honor, and I think that's pretty cool. See you guys later.